Hey guys, Barrett here. Welcome back to another video. Today, we're actually talking about dinking, my personal favorite part of the game. But you know what? As you get better in pickleball, you will find yourself in more and more dinking situations. But here's the thing. How do you actually take advantage of specific situations when you're dinking? I'm going to show you what you can do. I'm going to show you a couple of really great dinks you can do that's going to impress your friends and especially get you at a higher level in pickleball. So let's get started. Okay, so before we begin here, one thing that's really important to understand is that these are specific dinks for specific situations. You're not going to use these dinks all the time. These are opportunity dinks. When something comes up, when you get a dead dink over, it doesn't have a lot of spin or anything like that, these are the dinks you use to get yourself into a better position. So keep that in mind. The first dink that we're going to look at here is basically a center line to cross topspin dink. Now it doesn't have to be topspin necessarily, but I highly recommend it if you do have topspin skill to definitely use that. What it looks like is sometimes every now and then, if you give someone a really good cross-court dink going backhand this way, or backhand in my case, they will have no choice but to hit like a lobby little thing that lands right here in the middle of the kitchen. That is a really bad position to be in because here I am, I hardly have to move, right? I have the whole court open to me. I can go cross this way, I can go back over to him, I can go straight down the middle. There are a lot of things that I can do. One of them being this cross court thing. So let's take a look. Cool. Cool, so do you see the change of direction here? Basically, the more dead this dink is, the higher it bounces, the better chance you're going to have to do this. So watch. Pretty cool, and what you can do is you can really get the angle extreme on these dinks here, like that. Really brutal stuff. Nice dink, that was really good. That gives you a good idea of how this works. Remember that if you're giving your opponent these dead lobby dinks right in the middle here, be wary because something tricky is coming your way most likely. Okay, the next dink here is an extreme cross-court slice to the opponent's corner of the kitchen here. Okay, so you can probably see the very corner of the kitchen here. That's our spot. Here's the tricky thing. Remember how I said these dinks are specific, right? Specific situations. This dink is harder to pull off the closer to the center line you get. The reason is because the ball has to travel higher in order to clear the net, right? So if the ball is here as an example, right over here on the sideline, because the angle is so extreme and because the distance is further to the net, it doesn't have to climb as high. Whereas if the ball is over here on the center line, it's closer to the net here if I'm aiming at the same spot and therefore has to climb higher. And that's the cool thing about doing these kinds of cross-court dinks from way over here, is that because you have so much room to work with, the ball can be very low. And because it can be very low, it can land deeper in the kitchen without your opponent being able to volley them. Okay, it's a little bit of a geometry game here. To take an extreme example for clarity, just look at this ball right here. Look how close I am to the net. In order to clear the net, in order to get the ball over, it has to go virtually straight up. You see how that works? But the longer I go back, the more shallow that angle gets. Okay, so let me just show you what that looks like here. Okay, that's what I'm talking about right there. How you do the slice is up to you. Some people like to really rip it. Others just like to push their paddle through. You're going to have to experiment a little bit with that. But you can see when the ball is way over here, you can very clearly see how extreme that angle is. It's really something else. The next dink here is a down the line dink. Now, you have to be very, very careful about this dink because remember how I told you the closer the ball is to the net, right? Depending on where you're aiming, the higher the ball has to go in order to clear the net. But if you hit the ball too hard, guess what? It goes high into their strike zone, they kill the ball, and then you eat a pickleball, and that's no fun. So, you have to be very, very careful with these down the line dinks here. The cool thing about these shots though, is that if your opponent is just a little bit out of position, or they're camping the center line too much, you can really catch them off guard. As you're dinking back and forth, what you're gonna do is you're gonna use that backhand. You can either just push it straight forward. If you have a topspin backhand, that's really great. But what a lot of people do is they'll do like a little bit of kind of like a little slicey sort of motion, nothing crazy. Okay, so again, digging back and forth, and then boom, just like that. And it's really, really hard to get. Again, the slice is really nice because if you can slice it enough, but still control the trajectory, then what you're gonna have is a low bouncing dink, and that makes it even more difficult. And remember, the lower it is, the higher it has to come up over the net, which either is gonna make them hit it into the net itself because they're not hitting it high enough, or they hit it in your strike zone. Now, personally, I like to do slices like this. That's really my favorite kind of down the line dink. So let me show you the forehand version of this down the line stuff. Now I showed you the backhand version, that's okay. But what's really powerful is when you're down the line over here on the right-hand side of the court with a right-handed player in front of you, because this right-handed player is gonna wanna camp that center line. And this is where this dink becomes quite powerful. So let's just pretend like I'm dinking to the center line here, so he's having to kind of scoot over, right? Well, all of a sudden, boom, I can go down the line. Again, so I'm kind of like pulling him out wide. He's wanting to get all these shots, right? And then boom, down the line. And it has to be that low trajectory over the net. If it's like that high lobby thing, they're just gonna get it. And again, these are specific situations. It's best if they're deep. And it's even better if you've got the top spin. So watch. Okay, so he's gonna hit over to my kitchen corner here. Boom, down the line. Now that wasn't necessarily down the line, but I'm sure you get the point here. Okay, the last dink here is a bit of a doozy. This one is really, really cool, and I think it doesn't get done enough. It's simply a center line to center line dink. We've had all this conversation about all these cross-court dinks and how the distance is longer and so on. We just talked about how the down the line dink is really powerful. What about center line to center line? This dink is amazing when you can do it right. It can be very, very risky if you hit this ball too hard for obvious reasons, okay? But what you're gonna do is hit a straight dink. It's really important to not have this dink slanted in any way. It needs to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. The point of this dink is for it to pass behind your opponent and for the partners to get confused. That's the whole point. Now, we just talked about how if you get a short dink over here right in the middle of the kitchen, we just talked about how you have the ample opportunity to do whatever you want. But ironically, one of the toughest things to do is to actually just hit it straight down the center line. You can do that, but it won't be as penetrating because it's so close to the net. So this dink typically happens either on a low volley that you feel like you can't attack, or on a deeper bouncing dink right here on the kitchen. Okay, again, if you can attack then you should attack. But this dink really comes up and really becomes useful when you feel like you can attack, but you still want to get aggressive in some way. So let me just show you what that looks like. Now, did you notice how deep that ball was, right? Now, if there's someone camping the center line, yeah, you don't want to do that, right? This is where you've got the opening. And again, straight down the center line. Cool. Bonus points if you have topspin. If you've got any kind of topspin stuff, that's even better. Let me show you. Okay, that's even better. Now that looked almost close to an attack, and it's gonna feel that way because of the short distance, right? So keep that in mind. So once again, what's really important to understand here is that these are specific dinks for very specific situations in a rally or in a point or whatever. Keep that in mind. These aren't dinks that you necessarily do all the time. The cool thing about this though is that ironically, these kind of crazy awesome dinks that you're trying to do can oftentimes be what sets up the dink that you're trying to do specifically, if you get what I mean. These dinks are to get you ahead in a rally, not necessarily win automatically. So guys, I hope that was helpful. Those are a couple of dinks that you can do to really up your game. Hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to go over to pickleballkitchen.com. Got a bunch of stuff on there. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'll see you next time.